I suck at Jiu-Jitsu? How do I suck less at Jiu-Jitsu?
I guess to suck less.
The diabolical leader of the Headlock Squad.
Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to the newest episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show. So today we're going to look at some thoughts on mindset. We're going to look at some thoughts on mentality, not just from the competitor's perspective, but from the perspective, I think, of every person trying to get good at jiu-jitsu. How you approach something, the attitude that you have towards something is as important or sometimes even more important than what that something actually is, what you are actually going to do. For instance, there is this thought that if you put more effort into something, that it will automatically kind of equal you being better at it. You doing, I don't know, exactly what you hope to do, or getting to the place that you hope to be. But the problem with that is without the right mentality, without the right attitude, you will probably not get there. And we have a lot of different thoughts on just kind of defining what mentality is, why it's important. And then I'm going to give you guys 3 of little things that I named that I think are some of the most important mentalities to have as someone learning jiu-jitsu, but then also to have as a jiu-jitsu competitor. One of them is specifically for jiu-jitsu competitors. But the biggest thing that we want to look at today is just making sure that we have a definition of mentality. We know how we can manipulate our own mentality, and most importantly, we know why having a mentality is important. I think the perfect example, the simplest example, and this, I remember we had a poem that we had to memorize in school. I went to a private Christian school. We had to do weird stuff. I was like a senior, and we were memorizing this poem, but it was actually really good. And it was called Attitude is Everything. And that is today's first point. And it is that mentality or attitude is everything. These are synonyms. I made sure to check on the dictionary just so no one would get mad at me. But just back to that original idea of attitude versus effort. A simple example, and I want to say our principal gave us this example, but it was something along the lines of, I can make my wife breakfast. Maybe my wife is hungry. She says, "Hey, can you make me breakfast?" I can say, "Oh yeah, of course, dear," and make the best breakfast that I can. Or I can say, "Okay, yeah, that's fine," and then make the best breakfast that I can. But the result that I come away with is going to be different as a husband. And when we look at the importance of attitude, yes, it's as simple as you will probably have a happier wife if you have a better attitude in that situation. But then on top of that, it's like, well, if you have a wife that is now angry with you, that is going to change your day. That's going to also probably change your attitude some. That's definitely going to change her attitude some. And so there is kind of this compounding effect with our attitudes and with our actions and how we approach everything. And jiu-jitsu is going to be no different for us when it comes to mentality, especially when we start to look at competition, especially when we start to look at certain habits that people develop at blue belt that will eventually be the reason that they never get past like purple belt level, and then most likely will be the reason that they quit jiu-jitsu. And it is part of just not having the right attitude towards the situation, not having the right attitude towards your training, not having the right attitude towards your coach, or specifically who the coach is that night. Maybe you don't like this one coach, but you like the other one. And so when the coach you don't like is teaching, you just don't have the right attitude. You don't have the same mindset that you approach the coach that you like. And you can be like, oh, yeah, well, that's his problem. It really isn't. It could be his fault, but it's still in your control to have the right attitude and learn from whomever, even if you don't really care for the guy. And so we'll look at next kind of point on attitude before we start to look at the right attitudes for jiu-jitsu or mentality. Sorry, I switched to attitude on you guys already. But mentality is contagious. And I think that I have so many good examples of this, but you have good and bad examples of a good attitude or a bad attitude spreading throughout a jiu-jitsu school or just throughout a specific day. Sometimes, and who knows if this is a real thing, but sometimes I will go to a jiu-jitsu tournament and we will have a good first 3 matches, like really good. Not in a sense that, oh, our guy just won those 3 matches, but our guys won maybe with what we've been working on, and we've all been working on it and trying to get better, and then they start the day and they just prove that it works, and you get this feeling of like, uh-oh, and we have 30 more competitors throughout the day, with a ton of different divisions too. But you see those first couple matches and you see those few guys that do it and you go, man, this could be a really good day. And most of the time in a jiu-jitsu school, and I hope that one day all of you guys get to experience this because it's such a fun experience going to a jiu-jitsu tournament and seeing the winning mindset start to spread throughout your team. And don't get me wrong, we've gone to a lot of tournaments. Big, small tournaments, whatever, but just a lot of tournaments as a team with 10 of us and maybe come away with like no gold medals and maybe come away with just a couple of wins out of the 10 of us throughout the whole day with a couple of divisions each. And sometimes the losers mentality starts to take over. But it's just like, you watch most sports, momentum in sports is such a real thing. And in my opinion, so much of that momentum is belief. When you start to see yourself coming back on the points, you go, hey, I could do this. And then you will start to try a little harder, like start to push a little more, take a little more risk. And a lot of times your opponent will start to panic. And the mentality will shift for them, and it will stop going from, oh, I'm winning, I just need to keep doing more to keep winning, and it will start to go to, oh, no, I need to hold on to the win. I need to hold on to the win. And how I always tell my students, if you go into that mindset, most of the time for people, you start to focus on winning, and you stop focusing on doing jiu-jitsu. And you just go, oh, if I can just do nothing for this next 2 minutes, then I'll win. And the mindset is wrong. The mindset, the mentality has shifted. And I'll give you guys some thoughts on how to shift it back in a second. But we'll go to our third point on mentality. And we've already talked about this just in the last point. And that is your mentality comes from thoughts and actions. And so I said thoughts, it probably should be beliefs and actions, because you can have a thought that you don't believe that isn't part of the mentality. Because we'll get to this mentality in a second that we call the cottage cheese competition mindset. And when we get to that, we'll talk about sometimes you have thoughts that are negative in the middle of a competition that are not self-belief and are not positive, but they're loud in your head and like, you suck. You can't win this. You're about to lose. This guy is better. You're out of shape. This, that, whatever, right? We'll talk about dealing with that in just a little bit. But just because you have those thoughts doesn't mean you have to believe them. Doesn't mean you have to buy into them. I remember one time I was listening to somebody on Tim Ferriss, and they were saying the most dangerous thing that a man can believe is every thought that he has. And, it's so important to always look back. You always can go 5 years back and go, man, I was wrong about a lot of stuff 5 years ago. And you can always look now and say, well, maybe that means I could be wrong about a lot of stuff now. And that little mentality shift will change the way that you approach your whole life. You will stop going to, well, I don't need to grow anymore. I don't need to do anymore. And you will start going, man, I could be wrong about this. I need to learn more. I need to figure out if I'm wrong. I need to talk to people who are smarter than me. And so with those 3 thoughts, 1, mentality is everything. 2, mentality is contagious. And 3, your mentality comes from beliefs and actions. Now we will dig into the 3. Dang, that was when I quit doing intros on podcasts, I started doing longer intros on podcasts. It's just like, I think that was technically like a 12-minute intro, a 12-minute definition. So now we'll look at the 3 important mentalities. We'll say the 3 important mentalities for a jiu-jitsu competitor, or the 2 important mentalities for a jiu-jitsu hobbyist. And the reason that one of them is specifically competition-based, but the other 2 are not. But again, these are 3 habits. I will say 3 things that I will see people do repetitively, that if I see you have 1, 2, or 3 of these things, I know for a fact you will get really, really good at jiu-jitsu, and you will most likely never quit jiu-jitsu. And so the first habit, and this is the only one that's not named something funny, is the learner's mindset. And so we talk about this idea all the time in jiu-jitsu. I don't know if it's because of how sales works, or just because of how humans work, or because of how the internet works, or something. But to me, there is this obvious belief that we are going to finally be enlightened today, and then we're going to put a pin in it and then never have to think about it again because we are smarter than everybody. But again, back to that mindset of, you were stupid 5 years ago. I swear you were. If you don't believe that you were, maybe you weren't. Maybe you were really smart and I'm just stupid. But most likely, you also, you not only were stupid 5 years ago, but you also aren't very good at like self-analyzing. And so when we look back on the things that we believed, or the things that we did repetitively years ago, and even thought that they were right, thought that they made sense, and as they turn out, they didn't. Well, we can assume that today we're probably wrong somewhere. And so in jiu-jitsu, with technique, with whatever, with every this versus that in the jiu-jitsu space, I think that we argue it because we assume that there is going to finally be this finished product one day that is perfect, and we can sell it to the president or something like that, and then everybody will be forced to do jiu-jitsu because it will be perfect. And that is not the case. Or that it will get to the Olympics, or it will get to this or that. And the only way we can do it is with this us versus them mindset. And I just don't buy it. And the reason that I compare that mindset to the learner's mindset, and not like I just know everything already, is because the guys that think that they know everything always create us versus them. It can't just be, I know everything, now I need to share it with the masses. It's like, I know everything, and now I need to attack everybody else. And the truth is, those guys don't know everything. The people that know close to everything, though, are the people who don't stop learning. I loved what Henry said a couple podcasts ago when he talked about how he still isn't finished with the concepts that he's been teaching for 15 years, or that he's felt like he's mastered for 15 years, because he said as soon as you're finished, all you're saying to yourself is, okay, I'm done evolving. I'm done getting better at this. And he said every highly successful person that he's ever met had this mentality where they always believed that there was a little bit more that they could get better at. There's a little bit more growth. And the truth is there's probably a ton more growth, but you can only find it incrementally. It's like you can have the best guard passing instructional ever, but if you don't have the foundation of knowing why we pass the guard and knowing how to hold somebody down in side control or mount, then the instructional really doesn't matter to you very much. But if you know how to hold people down in mount and you know how to pass the guard, then the best, or you know how to, or get stuck in guards, I guess, and you have this problem that needs solved, and you know where you need to get better, and then you get this best guard passing instructional in the world, which is the trinity of guard passing, we all know, and then you apply that, you're in a better place than the guy who is brand new, right? Your little growth set you up for a big growth, right? And so that's a mentality thing. The idea that every time you come on the mat, that you're going to not only try to get a little better, but you're going to try to see yourself getting a little better. Because if you see yourself getting a little better, then you can know, well, this is working. You can have that same self-belief we were talking about in a jiu-jitsu match when you start to score your points back. And you start to go, hey, I'm winning this match again. Even though I'm down 2 points, I've scored 6 points in the last minute. This guy's in trouble. And it's that same mentality. It's that same compounding growth, but it comes from belief. It comes from you seeing yourself getting better and saying, hey, this works. It doesn't matter which coach I have on the mat. I am still getting a little better. I'm finding the right questions to ask. I have the right training partners to train with, and we train in the correct ways to get us better. And it's just like when you find these things, then you start to do them over and over and over, and you start to get really good at jiu-jitsu. And you start to find new ways to learn. But it only comes with the mentality that you will never know, that you can only get a little better. And trying to pay attention, trying to see yourself get better is one of the most important things. And we talk about this as a little off topic, but just one step deeper into that thought. If you are going, okay, yeah, I want to see myself getting better, but it is impossible for me to do. I cannot see myself getting better. Then you need to listen to episode 1, episode 98. We talk about the end goal method, and all it is a simple method of focus. If you like those, check out the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro, where we have Master Any Position in 6 weeks. This is a premium podcast course where we go through for 6 weeks and teach you actually specifically how to focus on a move, and then what simple actions you can take to kind of like, I guess, do the move best, do the position best, and then decide on the next position. So that's really cool. You would really like that. But we will get back into, let's move on, because I think the third mindset, we're going to go back to the learner's mindset a little bit. The second mindset is the Cottage Cheese Competition Mindset. And what this is so the reference is from the book Good to Great. Jim Collins talks about, I don't remember who it was. It's a triathlon guy. But this guy, he was washing his cottage cheese, rinsing his cottage cheese before he would eat it, right? One, cottage cheese is pretty gross anyway. If you're eating cottage cheese, it's most likely for health's sake. But then to rinse the sodium, in his mind, I think he was rinsing the fat off, which wasn't as logical, but it wasn't about the fat. It wasn't about the little bit of sodium. It wasn't about rinsing it. It wasn't about any of those things. It was about the mentality. The guy he had so much desire to win that he would turn over any stone, including maybe rinsing this cottage cheese could be that 1%. And yes, it wasn't that 1%. We know that rinsing cottage cheese is stupid. But that doesn't matter, because if he's willing to do that, there are so many other things that he was willing to do on the way to that. One of them might have helped. Two of them might have helped. But it's the mindset. I joke with my students about this when I am preparing to compete in the, maybe leading week, but definitely as we get closer to the day. Speaking of, I have an episode next week that I'm going to drop on you guys that is about how to compete in a super fight. It's different than competing in a regular jiu-jitsu tournament, and I've never done an episode on it. And I actually have some really, really simple thoughts that if you get a super fight ever, and people are just getting access to these, everybody I know gets a super fight now. And it's just this fun way to approach competing in jiu-jitsu, and it's not a tournament. But I have thoughts on how to help you with the mentality and the preparation and all that stuff, because it is different from a jiu-jitsu tournament. But when you are, I don't even remember what I was talking about with that. We'll just go back to the initial cottage cheese mindset thought and see if we come back to it. But with this mindset, it is that same. Oh, that's where I was going. I was going with my students. So in like the prep to this last super fight that I had, we were joking, and some of the younger guys, and so most of the time I just speak. How you have to speak to young people. I just very mean to them all the time, and so I just make fun of everything that they do. And so one of the guys was like, "Yeah, we're gonna go and get some chicken today. Do you want to come get chicken?" And I was like, "No, dude. Why? Are you kidding me?" They're like, "You don't have to make weight for this. You're way under." I'm like, "No, I don't want chicken. Chicken's a nervous bird." It's the mentality, dude. And obviously it's a dumb joke, but there is some truth with all jiu-jitsu guys. All jiu-jitsu guys that take competition seriously. Most of us have a meal that we want to eat before, have certain things or things that we don't eat before, right? And again, these things really don't actually dictate you winning. But the guy willing to do them cares so much about winning. He is so hard to beat. And again, the thing about competition mentality is it is not the thing that wins you the competition, but without it, it will definitely be part of the reason you lose the competition. And so what I mean by that, so often people watch movies and they think that it is going to be built around, jiu-jitsu competition could be built around toughness and being in this really tough situation where you're down and there's a minute left and you have to wrestle up and score on the guy. And yes, sometimes that happens. And that is, of course, part of the mentality. But the only way you get into that situation where it actually matters is if you've stayed in the moment for the whole match. And so as soon as you start to focus on the last minute before the match even ever happened, you're not focused on where you should be focused. You're not focused on what you can control, which is, we always talk about this on the podcast, your first three moves, your first grip, guard pull, your first grip, head bat, shot, your first three movements. And that's all you focus on in your mentality for the match. And the reason you do that is because that is in your control. And then you will be in the moment. You will see what happens from there. But as soon as we start to shift to, I'm going to be tough, and then David Goggins is going to be in my corner and he's going to be yelling for me, "You can do it." And like, I'm going to be out there like, "Yeah, David, I can. I'm going to wrestle up on this guy." It doesn't happen. when you go into competition, so much of it had to do with your preparation. All of it almost has to do with your preparation. And then your performance comes. But in the preparation is when the mentally strong people do the best. And that can be a double-edged sword. You can have, like, for a coach, you can have a really high-level guy that is super tough, but maybe a little too tough. And in competition prep, it is very common for him to get injured. And so then he's like, you're trying to keep him from getting injured, but the reason that he is good is because of that same mentality, right? And so you don't want to get rid of that mentality, but you also don't want to feed into it so much that you sell your body today trying to win a medal, and then you can't do jiu-jitsu anymore, right? And so another thought on this competitive mentality that, like, hey, I am here to win. I'm going to do what it takes to win. It's dangerous to have that mindset. It is dangerous to let your brain fall to, like, no, I'll just die for this one, but I think there is a level of that's necessary. You watch certain guys in jiu-jitsu at the highest level, and their willingness to just go out and get after it is why they win so many matches. But then so often the guys they lose to are the guys that don't get after it with them, that don't go crazy with them and just wear them out and then beat them, right? And so just like anything, your greatest strength can be your greatest weakness. So with this cottage cheese rinsing mindset, with this mindset that I'm going to turn over every stone, I'm going to listen to every podcast, I'm going to buy every instruction, I'm going to do every seminar, I'm going to do every private lesson, I'm going to show up every day because I want to win. And with that mindset can come a lot of injury. With that mindset, your greatest strength can be your greatest weakness. And so if you're dealing with that, if you're the guy that pushes too much and hurts himself too much, really try to get with people at your gym that can help you manage that. And that is the third thing on this Hey guys, Josh McKinney here. Just wanted to tell you about something really exciting that we have coming up in the month of July for the I Suck at Jiu Jitsu Show Pro. So we are going to master the turtle, the old man guard, if you will, with Steve McKinney this month. So my dad is putting together a course for the I Suck at Jiu Jitsu Show Pro subscribers, where he is going to show you his simplest position. It is kind of a mixture of half guard, turtle guard, and a way to wrestle up that is totally usable even in your 60s in jiu-jitsu. My dad is actually one of the only people that sweeps me in training, maybe one of 5 people that I train with consistently that can actually sweep me and actually has a really good guard to do that. And it is this half guard, this turtle guard that he is going to show you guys and share with you guys in the month of July on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro. If you are not subscribing yet and you love Steve McKinney, he also has that's my own, sorry, not Steve McKinney. Josh McKinney has Master Any Position in 6 weeks. Steve McKinney has Train Until 60 and Beyond. That is 60 plus moves and mindsets that work after 60 years old in jiu-jitsu. And then his newest course, Efficient Strength for BJJ in 15 minutes, where he takes you through 1 to 2 workouts a week, either at home or in a gym. And it is all of the strength and conditioning that you need outside of jiu-jitsu to get stronger, to protect protect your body and to feel so much better. And again, this is approved for people even at 60 plus, but as a adult jiu-jitsu athlete, this is the same strength and conditioning program that I use in the same amount of times that I use them. And so all that is available at the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro. If you are not subscribing yet, I do not know what you are doing. There is so much good content on there. Be sure to check it out. Let's go ahead and get back to today's episode. On this third mentality in this episode that we're going to talk about, and it is what we'll call the rising tide mentality. And you hear this saying all the time, the rising tide raises all ships, right? And it's kind of like this idea that success raises us all up, okay? And so often people have the wrong mindset, and they think that there is a finite amount of success in the world. And when they see someone else become successful that they know, that they automatically go to, that should have been me and that should have been my success. And the problem is, it's not how it works. You get what you get. I remember one time, my friend Charlie Hershey, after one of my students lost in a competition and he was a little bit down, Charlie Hershey said, "Oh, what happened?" I'm like, "Oh, he lost." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I always find in jiu-jitsu tournaments, you get what you deserve." Like, yeah, you do get what you deserve. You know, you get what you put in. And the same happens in the jiu-jitsu school. And so the guys that help people, they so often get helped. And usually they get helped without having to ask. The guys that don't help people, they tend to not get helped. The guys that are jerks to people, the guys that injure people, they tend to get injured, right? Because they roll at a pace that is not only dangerous for their training partner, but is dangerous for them. And so again, though these things are actions, just like we talked about in the at the beginning of the episode, not just your beliefs, but your actions will dictate your mentality. And yes, your mentality will dictate your actions, but it goes both ways. These things are related, meaning if I start to change my actions and try to change my mentality versus just trying to change my mentality but not my actions, right? If I am a jerk training partner and I go, I'm just going to try to be nicer to people, but I keep cranking on submissions, I keep, hurting people that are defenseless in comparison to me when we're rolling. And when I do that, like, oh, that's the wrong mentality still, right? And why? It's because it's the wrong actions. If you change your actions, even if you say, you know what, I hate everybody here, but I'm just going to make sure that I do not hurt anybody ever again when I'm training. That's all I'm going to focus on. And when you start to do that, you will start to acknowledge like, oh, wow, I really should be doing this. It's nice for me. And then you'll start to go, hey, I'm not getting injured as much. Maybe it wasn't these people's fault that I'm getting injured. Maybe it was my own fault. And again, your attitude starts to change because you change your actions. And so again, back to I wish I hadn't named it, so hard to say. The Cottage Cheese Competition Mindset. It is, I need to get better at jiu-jitsu now, right? I need to grow. And having that idea that like, okay, so it needs to be me versus all of the other local schools because those are the guys that I'm going to be competing against. And here's the problem. You go compete against those guys, and maybe you're the best one of those guys, and you beat them all year, and then you decide, well, I'm going to do the worlds. I'm going to do master worlds. And you go and travel and compete there. And you have only been and focused on being the best guy in wherever city in whatever state. And then you have to fight somebody deep from the jungles of Brazil, and he throws you on your head and beats you down. And so it's kind of this problem with that mindset of like, okay, I need to be this great competitor. So I need to beat other people because that will mean that I'm a great competitor. And the truth is, like, that's an outcome, whether you win or lose in jiu-jitsu tournaments. Whether or not you're going to be a good competitor is going to be built on your daily habits. It's going to be built on how you approach jiu-jitsu. Are you there to learn? Are you there to grow? Are you always trying to learn? Is there always a chance to get better? Well, here's the other side of that with the rising tide mentality is, am I willing to go train with some of those guys locally that I will be competing against at some point or another? Well, it's a mentality shift. If you say, no, I can't, because what if I lose to those guys? Well, you lost to those guys. Who cares? What if the real goal was to win Master Worlds? And what if the only way to do that was to get the 4 or 5 guys in your division or close around your age, around your division? You maybe fight them locally, but you won't fight them at Worlds. Get those guys better with you. Get better, even though you're all on different teams. You guys get together and train, because that gives you a really good baseline of, okay, this is what purple belts around my age and around my sides feel like. This is what they play. We could all be working how to beat this, because if we get good at how to beat this, then we're all going to get better at how to play it. And it's that same compounding learner's mindset, but it's applied to a group. And that is, again, this is how you get good as a competitor. This is how you get good as a hobbyist in jiu-jitsu too. You start to have focus, and you start to get around the right people that will get better with you. That gets you better faster than anything else, is getting better as a group. It is so much harder to get better when you are already better than everybody. When you are a coach and then you have a bunch of students that are new, any coach that has told you that you'll talk to about this will tell you that was the hardest time for them to get better at jiu-jitsu, unless they got to cross-train with people that weren't just their students. But if you're training with all beginners, how do you know what to get better at? Well, you don't. So how do you handle the situation as a coach? You positional spar. You teach everybody one position, and you get them good enough at that one position that they can now at least be training partners with you in that one position and help you grow, right? So therefore, their getting good at jiu-jitsu actually was a big part of you getting better at jiu-jitsu. And so it's that same mentality in the jiu-jitsu space that will keep you keep you progressing endlessly. And like I said, these things, they go hand in hand. Is like, I don't just want to have a learner's mindset, but not be tough and only learn for me. And I know guys that do that, and a lot of guys do that, and those guys are really good at jiu-jitsu. And it's like this, it is a personal thing for them, and it is not a team thing. That's totally okay. But I always notice that the guys that get the best are good and around good groups of people that are all trying to get better at once. They don't all have to be black belts. It's like you can have 2 or 3 really good black belts and a bunch of white and blue belts, and it will still, if the focus is growth for everybody, then everybody gets better faster. And people don't get left behind, because it's just like, that is just the focus. We're all trying to get better today. And again, that is an attitude. That is a mentality, and you can change it. And again, sometimes it's harder to change your thoughts than it is your actions. It's easier for some of us to have goals written down on a piece of paper that we accomplish each day than it is to actually just smile each day. And so if that is the case, you set the right goals. You set the actions that you think will dictate the right attitude. And then you focus on your attitude when you're doing those actions. You just try to keep the right mentality. So here's some examples of that. in 2021, I had dealt with a bunch of injuries. We've talked about it a bunch. I just really wasn't sure if I was going to get to compete anymore as an adult black belt. And I never really had done much as an adult black belt. And so that was really sad for me because I had trained so long and so hard to do it. And I knew that I needed to make a shift, but it wasn't one thing. It wasn't like, oh, I need to just do this and then I'll be good. It was I needed to shift my mentality. I needed to go from, okay, I'm injured, I probably can't compete this week, to what can I do? How can I build a new schedule? How can I figure out a way to either not be injured when I'm trying to go compete or figure out a way to compete through it if I have to? And that was just my mentality shift. And how we did it was through one, it was tough training. That was like, I know that for a lot of people, I tell you guys that's not what you need, but for some people that is what you need. For me at the time, the physicality difference in my division was what was causing a problem for me. Guys were too big and too physical for 10-minute matches. For me, even if I felt like I had better jiu-jitsu in the first few minutes, it's just like over time, unless I got on top, it would beat me down. I would just get too exhausted. And so, of course, try to get in better shape. And that was something I did. I ended up changing weight classes, and that made a huge difference because I'm just competing against much smaller guys. But the biggest shift, and this I attribute to just certain training that we would do repetitively throughout each week for, a year plus. Certain hard training where the goal was, and usually old Coach Junior Silva was in the corner just watching me do every round and then giving me the next guy that would just try to ruin my life. And a lot of times he would give me guys that we both knew I would win the round, but the guys were really tough, and he would give them some strategy that would just be to make me exhausted. And he would do that like 4 or 5 guys in a row, and then put me against somebody that was neck and neck good with me. And I was like, oh gosh, how do I deal with this? And getting in that situation over and over and over again, it created this belief system that I was going to find something at the end of this match. No, I don't care. It doesn't matter that I'm exhausted. It doesn't matter what the score is. I'm going to find something. And I have performed much better since then. Since 2021, I've had such a better black belt career. And I think to some of my toughest matches and matches where things were really, really close, even at the end, or even I was down at the end. And I can even point out in specific situations where I would have I remember one time I was down and I was in my guard. And I remember with like a minute left, I was down. I think it might have been tie score, but I saw a triangle and I went, oh man, I missed it. And my belief system wasn't that though. Like that was the first thought, I missed that triangle. But the belief system was different. I could have said, oh, I missed it. Oh no, there's only 45 seconds. The win is just slipping through my fingers. I'm going to lose here. But it wasn't that. It was like, I missed the triangle. That's going to be there again. That's going to be there again. I said it to myself probably 10 times. Just like, that's going to be there again. That's going to be there again. That's going to be, there it is. And I hit it. And it was like, I won the match. And it was that same mentality, but that mentality came from the actions. It came from the repetitive actions. It came from the repetitive belief, doing those things over and over. So again, that is just one example of how you can set yourself up in a situation to ideally change your mentality. I'm going to talk about this in more depth next week because that's what this idea of the super fights and how they go and how to kind of prep for them. But one thing I will say in this episode about super fights is right around that time. So I think 2021, right into 2022, I started accepting super fights, and I never did before. And it was because they made me very nervous even to accept at the times. And I was like, well, this is like, besides when I go to Worlds, this is the most nervous that I get for jiu-jitsu. So I can get preparation for this. I can show up and get really nervous and then have to perform. And a lot of times have to perform in my hometown, which is even more nerve-wracking for most people that compete in jiu-jitsu. And so if I could master that when I'm actually experiencing nerves, man, then those bigger tournaments are not going to be a problem. And the same thing for me. I stopped getting nervous at those bigger tournaments when I started to shift my mentality. I started to turn towards that fear instead of away from it. And again, it was a mentality shift. It was not just some shift of actions, and that was all that mattered. The mentality, though, it came from the schedule. It came from the things that I was making myself do. Even sometimes I didn't want to do, was not my ideal situation. But that is just kind of my simple thoughts for you guys on mentality. I hope this episode is good for you. Hope you guys liked some of the ideas that we talked about. And I really hope that these ideas are helpful for you guys. And, hopefully you can shift your mentality the right way, or maybe even shift the mentality of your team the right way. And that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you liked today's episode, and I hope that today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you next week when we talk about how to compete in a super fight.